You have an idea. You've built it, despite Alan telling you to sell it first. And now you want to get it out to the world, to put it out there, to tell everyone about it, to get people to use it, listen to it, watch it. Promotion is one of the most important pieces in any business. If you don't promote your blog, your podcast, your product, if you don't put it out into the world and market, no one else is going to do it for you. The extraordinary belongs to those that create it. Rebelling against business plans and debt, rebelling against what society expects of us to build cool businesses, make money, have fun, and do good. Let's create something extraordinary together. Welcome to The Rebel Entrepreneur. Welcome back to the Rebel Entrepreneur Coaching Series. This is episode 7 with Kim. Welcome back to the show, Kim.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back.
I'm excited to have you here. We're scheduled to talk about podcast promotion, and to sort of set the scene with one of my main thoughts about promotion is I think people tend to have it backwards generally. They spend too much time creating and not enough time promoting. And let's be honest, I do this too. I spend ages writing a blog post and then I slap it on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter and then move on with life. So I've spent 90% of my time creating it and then 5% is probably generous, let's be honest, 1% of my time promoting it. And then you get the results you get. Whereas actually promotion should be as big, if not even bigger, than creation. That being said, tell me where you are with our podcast, because we've been on a journey. It's been a while now. Give me an update. Where are we with the Kimberly podcast?
Yeah. I just finished recording the last episode for the season last week.
Wow. So you've recorded the whole season. Amazing.
Yes. It's very exciting. Yes.
There's a lot of hesitation there.
There's
what happened just then? Yeah.
There's a lot. Yeah.
I'm excited, but I'm going to take a big breath because I'm not actually sure I am.
I'm super excited. I just don't know what happens next and whether it's going to be, anybody's going to listen to it.
There's only one way to know that.
True.
Is to launch it and then tell everyone we can find, you should listen to this podcast and here's why. That's it. We should be out there. And I haven't been doing that with my podcast because I kind of create it and stick it out there and wait. So I'm not always the best. I go through phases. Sometimes I'm put my podcast out there and I'm like, great, let's promote, let's do this, let's do that. I'll do a mini experiment with Patrick. I'll create this. We do all this stuff. And then I go, okay, I'm tired. I just want to have a break. I want to hang out with Katie, watch a TV show, do some other stuff. So I go through ups and downs with it. But I guess that's the bit. Okay, so you've recorded the podcast. The functional bits of getting it on iTunes and having a host for this podcast and all that stuff, you've got all that taken care of.
Patrick does, as far as I know. Patrick is taking care of all that. Yeah.
He's quite trustworthy. For many years, he has delivered an episode of my podcast twice a week without fail. So I think we can trust him. And that's an interesting point to everyone listening. You either need to do it yourself or trust the other person is doing it. And one saying I always have is never trust someone who doesn't write things down. So if you're organize something, don't trust someone if they don't write it down because it's probably not going to happen. But we can trust that Patrick is doing that. Okay. So I guess before we dive into the process of what's next, let's start at the very high level. What's the goal for this? What do you want to happen next? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to physically happen, manifest, create?
That's a good question. Because now I've been doing it, I lost a little bit of track of the big picture. I want to share knowledge with the population that I'm speaking to, my audience. I want to build an audience. Yeah, those are the two things that I'm trying to achieve.
Okay, cool. So share knowledge, build audience. I feel like from this point, number one is really easy because it is literally just release one a week and tell your audience about it, and then you will be sharing the podcast. Like, that's it. I feel like there's not much more to this than schedule one a week and tell your email list. Because I asked you in the last promotion episode a few weeks ago, what resources do you have? And you said Instagram for Business 3,000. You had a mailing list of 600. You had some former current clients on the email list, and you had a Facebook account of Facebook groups you're part of. And it's like, well, okay, that's really simple. There's 4 or 5 things there. Each week it comes out. We share it with those 4 or 5 places. There's obviously a little bit of like, how do you do that? But it's like pretty simple. We share it with those, and you've ticked your first goal if you do that weekly.
That feels nice. That feels good.
Sometimes we make it too complex. And it should be simple and easy. Otherwise, we'll never do it. The challenge you get is onto the second one, because build audience is a never, ever ending program. Because if you go build audience, there's 7 billion people in the world. Like, we could continually go, and there's new ones born every day. So literally we could be continuing to promote every single day to the new people. Maybe not the ones that are born, but the ones who like become 18 or whatever the age limit is that we're looking for. But you get what I mean? There's like no limits to that. Yeah. Share with your existing community, promote it to your existing community. There's some bits we can do about messaging individual people, going like, listen to this episode, I'd love your feedback. Maybe there's clients you've worked with in the past and you go, this episode should go to that person, message them individually. And then you say at the end, if you enjoyed it, I'd love you to share it with other people you think will get value from this. There's some bits like that we can do, but the building the audience is the never ending piece. And I had an incredible friend who wrote a book, and she came to me, okay, we've written a book, we've got the publisher's deal, it's coming out, I feel overwhelmed. Like, I've spoken to people about marketing, I've spoken to people about promotion, like there's so much I could do. I'm overwhelmed, I can't take this. Yeah. So I had to sort of calm things down and go, okay, let's just come up with the simple strategy and what are the top 3 things you're going to do, and that's it. And as long as we do those 2-3 things to promote it, we're okay, we're happy. And then after we've done those 3 things, if we have extra time, if we have extra energy or extra resource, we can decide what to do afterwards.
That makes sense.
But we need a simple, easy to follow through plan. Otherwise, we end up doing nothing, speaking from personal experience.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
Okay. So I actually think like this should be 2 parts based on your goal.
Okay.
Like, part 1 is a weekly repeatable process, how you can share it with your existing population. And part 2 is what's 3 activities I can do each week to build my audience. And that's probably enough given the time you have to like push this thing forwards. And if you do those 3 things each week, I mean, you know this, productivity, getting to financial independence, losing weight is just about doing simple, repeatable things each week. And it's the same with building a business. But sometimes we make it so complex.
It's so funny. I feel like every time I hit like a new part of running a business, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I always do that. I'm consistent. I just keep showing up even if things don't go well. And then, it comes together and I master that part. But then the next time I get to a new goal, every time I'm like, this isn't going to happen.
I'm going to fail. It's all going to fall to pieces. Yeah, yes. It's unbelievable the self-talk we put ourselves through, even though we have a history of like being an adult and surviving and making things happen. We should probably have a bit more confidence in ourselves that we can do this. Okay, so Does that feel good, those two segments?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, the audience building is really the new part for me. So I have ideas and I am doing that. Like on Instagram, I've grown, but that's the part where it feels like beyond Instagram, I don't really know. And, I'm starting to send out emails every 2 weeks. But aside from that, I don't really know how to build an audience. And last time we talked about like contacting people that might have an audience and connecting with them, and like that's been in my head, and I think that's like part of what's getting in my way too. But yes, consistent strategies that are feel like they're going to be wins sounds good to me.
Okay, well, let's just very quickly, because I think it's an easy win. And everyone else listening to this, like if you're promoting a product, if you're building a business, if you're promoting your blog, play along with this. I want you to do 2 bits very simply. How do I share it with my existing audience? And if you've got a product or a service, it's like my existing customers. You can insert that word. And then how do I find new customers or build a new audience or find new people? And it's the same pieces. It's always the same. So let's very quickly and start on share with existing audience, and we'll spend most of our time on building the audience. So what are the 3 or 4 simple things, like what's the process you're going to follow each week to help share this fabulous new podcast you've created with your audience?
Thank you. So I'm starting to do emails. So I'll send out an email.
Perfect.
Instagram, I'll share it on Instagram. Believe it or not, I'm going to try YouTube and see how that goes. So that's happening.
What does that mean? Because when you say try YouTube, I go, if you come to a Monday and you see on your list, try YouTube, what does that mean?
Well, so I was referred to this organization that basically gets you set up with your first 8 YouTube video episodes. They're doing like all the market research for me, all the setup in terms of like the thumbnails and I just have to, tell them about my business, what I'm doing, and then record the videos. So at least I'm going to get started with them on YouTube and then see if I like it and go from there.
Cool. Excellent. So, like, I think what I love that because you're going to have 8 videos you're going to post, but like, then we're basically into the same thing. We have to promote those 8 videos.
That's true.
Because it's a bit like a podcast putting a YouTube video out. Like,
Fair.
Just because you put it on YouTube doesn't mean people will watch it. Maybe you're lucky the algorithm picks you up. But
I'm
for
hoping.
99% of people, that does not happen. So I think realistic expectations, you need to build this audience member by audience member and focus on growing, because it doesn't just happen. Like the chances of you becoming an algorithm sensation, and please take this in the nicest way because you're absolutely lovely and you deserve to be, as do I. But the chances of that happening are not high. Does that make sense to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I have no idea how it's going to go. So yes, I hear you that this is the same idea. I have to promote this in the same way that I would be promoting a YouTube channel.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And you can use the YouTube videos to point to your podcast episodes. You can absolutely do that. And I'm not discouraging you for doing that. I just want to be realistic that when we put something on these platforms, like that's where our work begins. And before I did the coaching series with Andrew Alinda, there was another guy I did a YouTube coaching thing with when I was just helping him. We didn't even record it, like madness. But I was helping him and he put it out there, and I had to spend all my time going promote, because he used to put videos on and just kind of rely on it going somewhere. And that just doesn't happen. We need to promote it. We need to ask the audience to share. We need to do that stuff. So I guess like YouTube is fantastic. I don't think it belongs on the list of like weekly things, try YouTube. It's like, what's the specific activity? Because I can see, okay, send email to mailing list once a week. We can do that. We can put a tick box against it and love it. Put one Instagram post out a week about the thing. Perfect. Tick. Done. Does that make sense? Like simple, achievable tasks that feel like you can do it.
Yeah. So I think that would be Instagram, email, and then like I'm starting TikTok.
We're starting TikTok. Okay. So we're starting TikTok. Yes. Love it. So you're going to put some bits out on TikTok.
Yeah. So I can share on little pieces of it. And I did record all the episodes. So the episodes, video record, so I can share those on YouTube as well as put pieces of the video on TikTok.
Perfect. So I have two types of marketing when I'm talking about this stuff. The first type is what I would call passive, which is where you put stuff out there and you wait for people to find it. I will post on Instagram and wait for someone to find it. I will post on Facebook and wait for someone to find it. I will post on TikTok and wait for someone to find it. That's passive. And then you have active, which is I will send an email to Dave and say, Dave, listen to the podcast episode. Now, you can do that a bit more mass, because a mailing list, you can mail merge it so it has the first name. But active is like going to a person and going like, you need to listen to this. Like, we're actively going to someone. We're not just sticking it out there and hoping someone drives past the billboard and listens to it. We're actively grabbing people. And I always say most of your work should be active, because that's how you build this stuff.
Okay. So, and that would not be like, you said it could be sending an email where it specifically has somebody's name, but I don't feel like, for example, I sent out an email earlier this week with like a whole, blog story. And then I said, please share this with people, every woman on the planet that would benefit. And I've gotten like no responses from that. So, and I feel like it was pretty solid information. So like, I feel like that's not really a very productive way to try to get, maybe it's easy enough to put that in the emails, but you feel like actually reaching out to somebody individually, you're going to get a better response in terms of building?
Yes, you will. Absolutely. And how many paragraphs long was the email? Roughly.
They're like little lines, so I don't know how to, it was like a page and a half maybe.
Okay. So when you get a page and a half email, what's your response to it?
It depends if I'm super interested in it or not. I'll read it if I'm super interested.
Most of the time I sigh and go, do I have to read all that? There's so much. When people send me long emails, I'm like, oh no. Someone sends me a one-liner, I'm like, awesome. I can like reply with that, function it, deal with it. So I don't know, maybe there is a test to go, okay, dear, like I keep picking on Dave. I don't know why, because your audience isn't even male. So I should probably pick a female name, but Dave makes me amused. Dear Davina, you say, Dear Davina, podcast has launched. I think this episode will really help you. Mm-hmm. Click here to listen.
And then you also say like, please share this with people that you...
Well, for the first one, you just want to get them to listen to it, don't you? And actually, like, before we get them to share, they need to know if it's any good. Because people do this to me. They go, Alan, will you share my book with everyone? And when they ask that, I get really uncomfortable. What do I have to do to be able to share their book?
Believe that it's worth sharing. Yeah.
And how do I know that?
You'd have to read it yourself for sure.
So what are they really asking me?
To read the book.
And like, I have a queue of books that I'm really excited about reading. And quite often those are about how to get to financial independence or how to build a business. And I'm like, I know this pretty well. I've achieved some of it. I don't, yeah. So it's really difficult to function that way. But like, if we have a trusting relationship and I know you, and then that's different. And I might put the time into reading it. So before you ask all your audience to share, like, build up the trust and they know it's good. Like, all I want you to do is listen to this. And if the podcast is good enough, they will love it and listen to the episode 2, episode 3. And by the time they've listened to episode 3 and they're addicted, and you message them and say, like, this is the big one, episode 4. I hope you've loved it. Now's time to share it. But then you've got them. So let's start with adding value and keeping it simple and getting them hooked, because your first mission is to get people to listen to it before we get them to share it.
Okay.
Does that make any kind of logical sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it's like really hard to balance sharing information and adding like a call to action aside from just like read this, listen to this. I find it really difficult to balance those two, and different people say different things about how often you need to be asking people to take some sort of action.
Like, the podcast is the value. The podcast is your green salad that you are feeding everyone to keep them healthy. That is the value. So let's just get them to listen to it, because your existing audience, they know, like, and trust you. Now we just want them to listen. And if they do that, you're going to have a fabulous first week on the podcast. You'll get hundreds and thousands of people listening. They'll get inspired, and then it will grow. Then it will go from there. That's our first job. And I think what we're trying to do at the moment is think, okay, 15 steps ahead. How do I like get them to listen, share, promote, do this, do that? And like, okay, just like one step at a time. Let's get them to listen first, and then we can shift to phase 2. Yeah, and everyone listening to this is the same thing. Like, what's the next action? Let's do what's under our noses, and then we can get more complex and develop version 2.
That makes sense.
It makes sense. Are you with me on this?
Yeah.
Sometimes when people say they make sense, it means they're not going to do it. They're just placating me. Sometimes they go like, that makes complete sense, Alan. And they go and do the opposite, like invest in cryptocurrency, and then I pull my hair out.
Well, I haven't invested in crypto, so
okay, good. We can relax.
No, I think, like I said, it's, yeah, I've been hearing this from other sources too. The importance of trust building being like the foundation for building a successful business. And prior to that, I had a very different type of business that there didn't need to be an audience in order for me to have a business. So this is all new to me. You know, like I feel like I'm definitely in the trust building stage of my business. So it's just, I think, partially just like reiteration and the question of like, okay, but how do you build an audience? Like, just keeps like, you know, trying to like get into my brain.
So I think the answer to how do you build an audience is one person at a time. Let's start that way. There are advanced things that we can get to, such as you can put Facebook adverts out. You can spend money on this. You can spend money on that. You can go huge in all these different ways. And we can absolutely do that. I think you've already got an audience that we can engage with. You've got thousands of people that are already here. So let's get them to listen as step 1. And then like building the audience is next.
Gotcha.
And then I'd be going, can you reach out to 3, 5, 10 people personally each week to say the new episode is out? I really think you'd like it. Next time you're in the car, having a walk, feeding the pet, washing the kids in the bath, and you don't want to hear them scream, listen to the podcast and let me know what you think.
Yeah, I can definitely do that.
Perfect. Because then we've got emails, we've got Instagrams, we've got TikToks, we've got personal messages, and that is enough. Then, like, if you want to outsource some extra bits, you can absolutely do that. So you could say to someone you work with, you could say, okay, so we've got Instagram followers. Like, I want you to go through them and say, hi, Davina, insert name. Thanks for following me on Insta. I don't know if you know, just released a podcast. I would love you to give me feedback. I'm new at this. Would you have a listen? And send them a private message. And you'll get some people who go, oh, I got a message and she's messaged me directly. She wants my feedback. But have a listen and see what she thinks. And you'll start to get people to listen and engage. And if they get value, they'll keep listening and they'll keep coming back. But it's like step one is just grab them and go, please have a listen as much as you can. So I think like what I was trying to do is go, okay, here's the easy 4 things that Kim's going to do. And then if you want to, we can expand that to what do you want to like outsource to really scale reaching your existing audience.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Like engagement is something that's been kind of circling because I have a great following at this point on Instagram, but I don't get a lot of engagement from my audience. Like they'll like stuff and I get a few comments, but there's not a conversation happening. And it's become like really clear to me recently that there's not engagement. And so I've been thinking about that, but I haven't quite gotten to a lot of like action steps to figure out what to do about that as of yet. So that's really helpful. So I used to do a
presentation skills course, and I used to like stop and stare at everyone and go, what's the quickest way to engage your audience? And they'd all look a bit confused at me, like you are, pausing, waiting. Is he going to tell us the answer? And it's an actual question, Kim and everyone else listening. What's the quickest way to engage an audience? What's the quickest way to get them thinking and engaged?
To ask them questions.
Mm-hmm. That's it. It's exactly what I just did. That's it. You have to ask them questions. If you've got statements going out, what happens?
Yeah, it's just crickets. I mean, they're reading, they're listening, they're reading, but they're not responding.
Mm-hmm. If you want a response, you have to ask for it. So what questions can you ask them? And maybe it's specific questions in the posts, maybe it's in the text, maybe it's even asking them. Like we asked them in this a hypothetical private message to people on Instagram. We said, I've just released a new podcast. I would love to have your feedback. Would you share your thoughts with me, please? And then like some people will listen and say yes. Some people will ignore the message. But you've at least started to ask them what they think. You could even ask them a question. What's the subject of episode 3?
It's a live coaching
or 4
session.
Or 5. Yeah.
I mean, they're all about different aspects of feminine freedom. So confidence, confidence is one of them.
Okay, cool. So maybe it is like you ask the question, do you feel free to express yourself? And like, I'm just genuinely curious, and you could do polls to your audience. Do you feel free to express yourself? You could have yes, no, and a sliding scale. And then you could put, if not, why not? And please comment below. And start to really engage people and get what they think, and then go like, you need to listen to this episode to talk about this. But if you want engagement, we need to poll them, quiz them, grill them, speak to them, like stare them in the whites of the eyes, and so they cannot escape our focus.
There's so much I want to say about that.
Please do, feel free.
I was just wondering if that's really what you look at when you look at people's eyes, but that's irrelevant to our conversation.
What, the whites of their eyes?
The whites? No. Is that a saying? I feel like I don't know that one.
Yeah, generally it's like, don't do this until you can see the whites of their eyes. Because if you're far away, you can't see the whites of their eyes. So it's like, are you close enough? Are you like,
that makes sense.
Yeah, Yeah, it is an expression, but it didn't make sense in this instance. Well, I feel like it did. You knew what I was saying.
I did. I just got sidetracked. No, I think like what was happening as you were saying that was I was realizing that in the past I haven't had space to have the conversation, and I think like now I do have the space to have conversations, and also I could outsource and get help with that if I'm, if it's getting overwhelming.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a team of people you work with, there's other therapists, there's all sorts of things. There's so many people you could do it with if you want to. The key is if you want engagement for your existing audience, you have to like drag it out of them, ask them. And some people will run away and some people will engage. But it's the only way to get engagement is to like demand it, question, engage, talk, comment, use their names, all the things you would do in real life, but virtually.
Well, that's what it's all. Hearing this is new to me because I've never been in a situation where I've had to engage an audience or like wanted to engage an audience. So it's nice to hear from you that it actually it's not just like a question, that it takes effort, and there's like you're saying like the word dragging, or you have to put a decent amount of effort in to get people to engage. So it's nice to know that it's, because sometimes I think I've put stuff out there and been like, oh, nobody cares, so I'm just not going to, keep trying. Or I haven't had the space and energy to really push. So it's nice to hear the actual strategies that potentially would work and the amount of effort that needs to be put in. Yeah.
In general, do people have huge amounts of free time and they're just sitting around waiting for your messages?
No.
In general, are people super busy and you need to absolutely grab them because it's important that they listen to this?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like part of the confidence that comes with building an audience, is being willing to have people like kind of ignore you and still keep doing what you're doing. So I think this is like the engagement aspect of it that I haven't started practicing yet.
And that is why everyone does passive marketing, because it's safe. Yeah. I have worked on my website, posted it on Facebook, and put it out on Instagram. Like, I've done my bit. So they're safe. It gets unsafe because you risk rejection, you risk ignoring when you actually actively are marketing to people, finding them. But if you're not doing that, you're never going to build an audience. And that's why most people never do build an audience. But it is a risk. Because let's be honest, okay? I haven't heard episode 1 of your podcast yet. We don't know what the audience reaction will be.
Mm-hmm.
It might be phenomenal. It might not. We don't know. Yeah. It's a bit like when they release a movie. I'm always surprised when Hollywood releases a movie and you're like, you spent how much and it was that bad? Like, what are you doing over there? No one aims to build a bad movie. They just they tried their hardest. It didn't hit and they'll try again. And we've tried our hardest and we just need to put it out there and tell people about it and we'll see what happens from there. But there is a risk. But if you ask for direct feedback, you'll get people to listen and they will tell you whether they like it or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to be willing to accept that. Or you can put it out there on Instagram. No one will ever listen. You'll never really get any feedback. And you can be happy that you tried and move on with life.
Yeah, these are good points.
I'm not helping you feel any more comfortable, though, am I?
Well, I mean, I guess I can't really know until it's out there. I know that people appreciate what I do, and I know that the people that were coached on the episodes, they got something out of it. So it's not like it's not going to be a total failure or anything like that. But yeah, I guess I don't know. So I'm still in that well, see how this goes.
So let's grab them by the face, let them listen to it because we think this is valuable. And like from what you've just said, the people who you coached got huge value out of this. The people listening, but that's why like 1,500 to 2,500 people a week listen to this podcast coaching episodes. They listen because they get huge value out of going, I'm going through exactly what Kim's going through, trying to launch my thing. I'm feeling exactly what Kim's doing. Like the chances are it'd be incredibly valuable, but like we have to put it out there and get them to listen and ask for feedback. And they will tell you what they think. They will tell you what they love. They will tell you what they hate. And that's okay. But if we don't ask, we'll never find out and we'll never build the audience. We need 2 bits, a weekly process to share with the existing audience, and then we need a couple of bits to build the audience. Tell me where we are in our thoughts based on my tirade of we need to put it out there.
Good. I feel good about it. It's just it's another level of being vulnerable, putting yourself out there that I think I just have to start doing and know that I'm going to get all kinds of receptions from that. But the ones that do respond, I hopefully will build an audience that is full of those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So your question next is, how do you build an audience? Well, there's a million different ways. There are a million different ways we can do this. Do you have a budget to do this, or would you like to use your own energy to do it?
Probably a bit of both.
Dramatic pause. Love it. A little bit of both. Okay. So we've got 2 things. We can hire people to help us, which Patrick and I did a experiment a while ago live on the podcast on one of the episodes where we hired 3-4 people from People Per Hour, Fiverr and Upwork and asked them to promote the podcast. And then we promoted it. And the results, I can share with you the results. I can't remember exactly what they were, but it was X pence or X cents per listener, per download. And the best performance, like Patrick and I defeated them all with our promotion. We did the best job. So you will always get, like, you will do the best job because if you reach out and say, what did you think of this? What did you like? People will respond better than someone randomly doing it for you. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't outsource it as well. And I've kind of got it in my mind as well. I found a guy online that I wanted to test who said for, I think it was $175 or $200 a month, he would do X to promote the podcast. And he had all these ideas, things to do. And I'm thinking of having a go with it myself. It's interesting, isn't it? But like, in terms of what do you actually do, it's the same things. Like, are we going to engage in X women's group, which you said were some of the resources you're going to do? You've got your friends, which is the easiest bit. So I'm going to reach out to the people that I know and say, can I come on your podcast to talk about, like, you reach out to Brad and Jonathan at Choose FI and say, can I talk about women being confident with their finances? And you reach out to whoever it is, the next person you know, and say, can I speak to about this subject with you? And you engage the fellow creators, you work to be a guest on their show, you start to do that stuff. But it's the same things, but now we're doing the outreach as opposed to engaging our existing audience. And we just need 3 or 4 simple things that you can do, that you will do each week that will move it on.
Cool.
If you just had in your head, like, what's the one biggest thing that you think would move the needle finding a new audience? Like, if you had to just pick it out of the air right now and you said, like, I have this feeling that this is the one thing, this is what the universe is telling me to do to build my audience.
I think like talking to other people about what I'm doing is probably, that's the only thing that I can think of that would be beneficial.
That's the That's it. Just talk to other people. That's it.
That's the only one I can think of. I mean, like podcasts, appearing on podcasts and other people's podcasts, are connecting with other people in the field that could promote it on whatever platform they are using. That's what comes to mind. I don't know what else I could do.
So there's LinkedIn groups for women in business and confidence. There's Facebook groups. There's going to other podcasters and working to get on their show. There's creating an advert for your podcast and asking if someone else will put it on their podcast. There's talking to bloggers, saying like, how about if I wrote an article for you? Would you then be happy to have a link at the bottom that says, come to my podcast? There's reaching out individually to people. There's a million things we could do, which is kind of why it then becomes vague with what you're doing. What I always do in these situations is go to Google and I Google, how do you build a podcast audience? And then I read like 5 articles and I go, which 3 things am I going to test? And then I try them and see if they work. And if they don't, I try something else. And I think like we could try Facebook ads, we could try LinkedIn adverts, we could do trailers. And like I've done lots of these things. I think the biggest bumps in the audience for this show have been when I've gone on other podcasts, when I've told people about it, when I've sent it to my own mailing list. Like some people I know didn't even know I had a podcast. I forgot to tell them. And then you could sort of get those bumps. And then I start to write blogs about it. Like press can be a good one, but there is a whole art to getting in the press, finding the right things. I don't know how to say this without getting political. There's a lot going on in your country you can comment on currently if you want to get press. Let's leave it at that. But you know what I'm saying. Like there's so many ways to get active with women being confident to speak up for themselves and own their rights. And they should. I fully support this. There's so many ways you could comment, get involved, engage, build audiences, get noticed. And some of that crap should be stood up to. There we go. I'm getting annoyed now and I want to defend people. I see bullies.
Agreed.
So does this, I'm trying not to, I'm trying to stay out of that, but you know what I mean? Like,
I do, yes.
Yeah. Does that kind of make sense to you? There are so many different ways. We just need to pick 2, 3, 4 and go, this week I'm going to do these 3 or 4 things.
Gotcha.
Like there's fairly easy tackleable ones. Like what podcast host do you know?
Yeah, I started to seek out podcasts through Instagram for people that are doing similar stuff or people that I like resonate with. So I could definitely do that. I've started to build some relationships with other people on Instagram. And yeah, so Facebook groups, I think I mentioned, I can definitely do that. I don't know how I feel about like paid advertisements. I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes I think I use them on Instagram. Like I have a low budget ad that's always running. So I could change that up and make it focus on the podcast or add another one.
Just for the first week, maybe.
We'll see if it works. It's funny because I feel like what has worked with those is when I have been running it for a long time and there's like a bunch of likes on that particular post, and then I get more traction with it. So I run the same post
thing
over and
over. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I've tried a bunch of different ones, and what I've found is when I pick the ones that go really well the first time I put them out there, and then I just keep running it, and that's I think part of what brings in new followers on Instagram for me. But it's kind of hard to track all that stuff.
Yes, yeah. Sometimes it feels like a full-time job just analyzing the figures and working out what works or not. Yeah.
Yes, I try not to. So yeah, I mean, all of those things I could definitely sort of just like rotate between that list and connect with different people in different ways.
I think it's starting off with what's the 3 things I'm going to do, or like so we've got the podcast, we know the date. Like, let's start now. What are the 3 things I'm going to do this week to build up to the launch? Because some people record podcasts ahead of schedule. Like me,
Mm-hmm.
this is July 2022, and I've filled up my entire podcast list for the year. I've recorded until 2023 now, so I've got
Wow.
about 5 or 6 months in the bag. Then I will come up with a new plan for next year. And there's other people who would record them each week because that's the way to do it. So, like, contact a bunch of people and say, like, I think we could do this together, or I've got this idea for you. And if we just start right now doing 3 or 4 things that will promote your brand, what you're doing, your podcast, and you go on the show and I've got this podcast coming, here's how you find it, just Google
Mm.
this or click on this or search my name or whatever it is. But we can start now doing that.
Yeah, I totally could. I mean, I was thinking about some of the bloggers that I've connected with recently that I could ask. I mean, I don't know if they'll say yes or no, but I can ask and see if they would be interested in having me write something related to their topic area.
Love it. Because if you said to them, like, so blog writers, if they're like professional blog writers or they're creating stuff, they have to write. They have to have content to engage people. And if you came to them and said, like, I know your blog's about this, I think this is an interesting angle. Like, here's 3 ideas. Would you like this article for your blog? All I ask is you put a link to my new podcast at the end. That's it. And see what they say. They might say no. They might say yes.
I like that.
But it's super simple. It's super easy. And if you make it easy for people, like, I'll do all the work. All you need to do is say yes and then post it and share it with your followers. That's it. And that's going to reach a whole new audience. And actually, the quickest way to build your audience is to use someone else's audience.
Cool. Sorry, I just remembered I had a connection to somebody out here that's in the film industry, and I could connect with her and see. I think she works for like a news station out here. I kind of forgot that I had that connection.
I love that. Maybe ask her what she's working on. Start with what are you working on and be interested in what she's in. And then I'm sure, like, that's always my route, is understand the other person. And by the time I've understood them, I've had 72 ideas about what we could do together.
Cool.
But this is kind of what I want to say to everyone out there is building an audience sounds like a scary big thing. But actually, when you break it down, it's talk to person Y, send message to person X, write to Davina and ask her to listen, or Dave, because we're not sexist, we'll write to anyone. But it's like, write those messages, but like breaking it down to what are the simple activities that we can do every single week to build this. How are you feeling, Kim?
Better. I think the idea of reaching out to somebody that already has a big audience feels intimidating. I think the steps that you just shared of offering a few topics and being interested in what they're doing feels less like a cold call, you know?
Well, especially you know lots of them. You start with the people you know. You're in a mastermind group with a bunch of them. You're in a whole set. You know all these people. Just speak to them and see what they say. And they could, like, it's up to them. They can say no. They might say yes. They might say no, and that's their choice. But we can ask. You've got such an advantage because you already have a big network, and that's why I'm trying to say to you, play in the network you've got already, and then we can go to building the next network.
It's still scary. It's still scary because it feels like I'm like little fish, and you know these people have
Little
it's not
fish. Oh. Let's think of one specifically. Did you have one person in mind? You don't have to say their name. And for everyone out there, play along with this as well. Like, we're always thinking about reaching out to people, but sometimes it is done on it's scary to reach out with people, but there's not a face attached to it. So if you've got someone, like, please think of someone now you should reach out to. Have you got their mind? You got them? Okay.
Yes.
Can you see their face?
Yes.
Okay. Are they that scary?
No.
Are they
not
mean?
Scary at all.
Oh, no. Is she mean?
She's not mean.
Okay. What percentage evil is she?
Definitely 0.
Okay.
If you could be like a negative.
So, like, how comfortable do you feel, like, talking to that specific person?
Very, very comfortable.
Okay. And this is the problem that everyone has, is generically reaching out to people is scary. But reaching out to a specific person, Davina, is easy, because it's like, oh, it's just that person. They've got a nice face. They are who they are. Like, okay, I can do that. That's part of the reason. Even if it's someone I don't know, I like to find their LinkedIn photo. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, they look like a nice person. They've got a friendly beard. I can ring them. Sometimes I do look at their LinkedIn profile and think, oh, they look scary. I'm sure they're not. I'll have a go anyway. But it makes it more real, because it's just a person. They're just a human, just like you. And yet you're not a little fish. We're all humans just doing what we're doing. And there is a bit like, if I reach out to Tim Ferriss and say, can I have come on your podcast? He probably doesn't care, because he finds his audience and stuff. But we're not doing that. They're not like, you're not reaching out to Arnold Schwarzenegger and saying, will you promote me to the state of California? You're just reaching out to a couple of people you know and saying hi.
Yeah. I can do that. It's not like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I feel like he'd be pretty nice too, though.
Yeah, so I would love to have him. Arnold, if you happen to be a Rebel Entrepreneur listener, I would love to have you on the show. I really would. If anyone's listening to this and knows Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'd love to talk business with him. Dramatic pause. Who knows? Right. But to everyone listening to this, does this make sense? If you can visualize the person, see their face, you can probably go, okay, that's not too hard to reach out to them and have a chat. And that's what I think you to do. And then you feel comfortable doing it. So I think what we've got is kind of 2 steps here. One is breaking it down into clear activities. And 2 is then deciding on specific humans to speak to. Because when you know it's a specific human, it becomes comfortable. When it's a generic, I need to make cold phone calls. It's quite tough. But when it's like, I need to ring X person and I've chatted to them before and like, it'll be fine. Even if you haven't looked up their LinkedIn picture and they're probably smiling at that stage. It's like, they look okay. I'm sure I can handle this. Okay. So I think we've come to the point in the podcast, Kim, where I'm going to ask you to commit to some things. Obviously, that's what I do every podcast. Whether you follow through is up to you. Same for audience listening. I'm going to ask you to commit to some things. 2 pieces. 1, what are you going to commit to sharing it with your existing audience when it comes out?
I'm going to share it on Instagram, on TikTok, and what was my last? Oh, email.
Cool. So currently that's 66% passive. Do you have another active thing that we could throw in maybe to make it more active? Maybe 50-50?
Yes. Yeah. And then I'll reach out to, I wrote 5 people to ask them to listen and give feedback each week.
Perfect. Can it be 5 people a day?
Maybe.
For the first week or 2?
Yeah, for sure. Yes.
Cool. Perfect. Okay. And then to build your audience, which we will actually start now before the podcast launches, what's your first 3 activities you're going to do to build the audience?
I'm going to reach out to some of the bloggers I know and see if they'd be willing to let me write a blog post for them. I was thinking I would reach out to friends and family and see if they are interested in joining my mailing list, since I don't have all my friends and family on there. And then I'm going to probably reach out to this individual that I know in the area that's in the film industry and see if she, I don't know what's going on with her, if there's any way that I can be connected more to her and what she's doing and what I could do for her.
Perfect. Love it. There's one thing I'd add, if that's okay. Am I allowed to set you homework?
Yes, please.
I'd say to the friends and family and the people you know, I'd say I'm launching a podcast coming up. I'm going to be launching it on X day. I really think it has value. Please, will you help me share it or promote it?
Okay.
And I'll make it super easy for you to do it. I'll send you something you can post. I'll send you something you can share. All you need to do is share it with this text. I will make it so easy for you to do. But please, will you help me? You'll be surprised by the amount of people who say, yeah, of course I'll help you on that day. And then all of a sudden on that day, you're on every news feed everywhere. And people are like, oh, I should probably listen to this. Maybe it's good. Maybe that Kim knows something.
Okay. I can do that.
Perfect. It's like a little team of people to help you promote it. And they want to see you succeed. Your friends want to see you succeed. I want to see you succeed. We all do. So, we will share it. And if I am not asked to help share it, I will be fully offended, just FYI.
Thanks for letting me know.
Good. I'd like to be clear about these things.
Thanks. So that feels good. I'm excited about it.
Perfect. Do you have any closing thoughts, remarks, comments for me, the audience, before I wrap up with my closing thought?
No, thanks for walking me through it. It's always really helpful to have the conversations, because it's, otherwise I'm just either having the conversations with myself with no experience, or I'm avoiding having the conversation with myself because it's too overwhelming. So I really appreciate the help. It's huge for me. It's huge. I mean, I can't believe I have the whole season complete. That's wild to me.
A round of applause for that. It's incredible.
Thank you. Well, thank you for walking me through it. It's a big deal.
It's my pleasure. And to everyone else listening to this, and to all of us, I think even to myself, I need to hear this message repeatedly. When you are taking on something big, it feels like such a mission. You're building a podcast and you have to build your audience. And it's like, how do I do this nebulous giant thing? And it feels so huge and it's difficult. But if we break it down into small, actionable steps that we can actually take each day, we can make progress on achieving that. So what I want you all to do is think about, what's the one thing I can do today to push on my project? What's the one next action? Do you want to call Dave or Davina? Do you want to send an email? Do you want to speak to this person, speak to that person? Do you want to do a post on this, crack out this, message this person, ring Arnold Schwarzenegger for Alan? Who knows what it is? What's the one next action you can take now to keep working on the next step? Because we always talk about the extraordinary belongs to those that create it. But the extraordinary is rooted in the mundane daily activities like ringing someone or sending an email. That is how we build extraordinary. Now, please go work on extraordinary for you. You can have any life you want to. Choose to build something cool. Choose to take action. Choose to work to make your dreams become reality. Stand out. Be different. Be yourself. Be a rebel entrepreneur.